Love. The whole month of June, we're going to be talking about love and looking at that love, that higher and deeper love. And so we start off with what really is love? What is it? And we're going to look at it with curiosity. And it's a life-changing question when we look at that. And the question is, are we able to let love be present in both the uncomfortable and in the good? Things that we perceive as uncomfortable and we perceive as good. And when we ask this question, it challenges us to recognize that this divine impelling love isn't solely for joyous moments. So if you're like me, most of us probably grew up feeling that love comes and goes. It can be given and it can be taken away. I can deprive someone. I can love someone. I can love for, like Ram Dass said, I can love for this or that. I can love you because you love me and not love you because you don't love me. And it's dependent. It's a feeling and it's dependent on circumstance and the behavior of ourselves and others. It's dependent on life unfolding how we want it to unfold, is how I've perceived love for a lot of my life. And I think a lot of us have. But let's look at this. What if love is deeper than a sentiment that's right there on the surface of what's going on? What if it's not fragile or temporary or fleeting? What if it can't just be given and taken away? And that it's not reserved for just the joyous moments only? Let's look at love from that standpoint of it's the essence of all reality. It's the fundamental fabric of the existence that we are experiencing, and its nature is to be present in all of our experiences. In How to Use the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says there is but one ultimate impulsion in the universe, and that impulsion is love. This love is more than emotional sentiment. Although it must include all such emotional sentiments, it is the pure essence of divine givingness. So love goes beyond what we feel and see and experience on the surface. It's an expanded awareness. And this expanded awareness does not deny that there are difficult times in our life. And what it does is in those times when we come from love, when we can sit in it and know that love is there, it aligns us with life itself. And it invites us into a new understanding of both ourselves, well, both of ourselves, of others, and of the divine itself. And it reveals this deeper current that runs beneath the surface of the circumstances that we are experiencing. When we consciously choose to see this underlying current, the divine givingness of all that we are, and when we start to see it in every situation, both the joyful, the ordinary, the uncertain, and even the painful. What happens is we have this expanded experience of not just humanity and everything around us, but of our own self. And this becomes a spiritual practice. And what it does is it allows us to transcend emotional reactions, reactions that can be fleeting or just totally reactive to what's going on. Allows us to take that moment to engage and go into that space and engage with life from this place of universal unconditional love. It empowers us to find peace and presence. And knowing that love is constant, it's unwavering, it's the truth of our being, and it is the world that is around us. So what we're going to do today is look at three ideas that are part of this spiritual practice. One is that love is in every moment, that our relationship with love is our relationship with ourselves, and that love is not just a concept, but it is a living, breathing experience that we have. Well, okay, Jackie, you say love is in every moment, but I don't feel love in every moment because it's really easy for me to recognize it in what I perceive as the good. When I hear a kind word from a friend, when I hear one of my grandchildren, my granddaughter Sloan in particular, has a very infectious laugh. And when I hear her giggling for not even any reason, she just will start to giggle because something's going on in her mind. I can feel the love. I can feel it in that warm embrace or in that quiet moment of when I feel the gratitude of just being who I am. Or if I'm experiencing the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset, it's really easy to recognize love in that moment. It's not so much easy, it's not as easy to recognize it in disappointment or confusion, conflict, or when I'm afraid. That's when it can be difficult. But our true nature is love. And what we need to remind ourselves, is that love is not diminished by the struggle that we may be feeling in the moment. Because what happens is when we start looking at things from that perspective, when we take that moment, no matter what's going on, to come back to our center, as Bob was talking about centering, we come back into that center of ourselves. What we find is that love is that quiet strength that will help us stay present in pain. It becomes a compassion that will soften judgment when we see or experience something or someone that we have some judgments about. And it's the grace that can help us keep our hearts open when it would be so much easier to shut down. In an interview that Stephen Colbert had at one point in time, he was asked about a plane crash where his father and two of his brothers were killed when he was 10 years old. And what he said is, of course, don't want it to have happened, but it's a gift, but it is a gift to exist. And with existence comes suffering. If you are grateful for your life, then you have to be grateful for all of it. You can't pick and choose what you're grateful for. I had to learn to love the thing that I most wished had not happened. Now, I had a similar experience myself of finding love in a situation that really tore me apart. My mother and I, for many years, as I was growing up, had this on again, off again relationship. And as it became into my like senior year in high school and stuff, my mother and I really, really started to bond. And we had a number of wonderful years together through my latter part of my high school and through college. And then 3 days from turning 21, I got married. And she was so much of a support through all of that. And that was at the end of August. On Christmas Day that year, my mother fairly suddenly left this world. She transitioned. And I was devastated. Not only did I lose my mother, but that time where we, are joyful and rejoice and we experience all this wonderful love and joy at Christmas time was, in my perspective, ruined. And it was ruined for literally decades. And it wasn't until I started to work on myself and to see what Stephen Colbert saw, that it was a gift to exist. Over that time, I had this incredible relationship with my husband at the time. I had a great community of friends with the job that I had, and in our own, just our, the friends that we had met. I had started to have children, and it was having my children that got me to realize I needed to forgive myself I needed to forgive myself for hating God. I needed to forgive myself for being angry with my father for decisions he made. I needed to forgive myself for not going and seeing my mother. And as I did that work and I started to see love in that, I realized all of the experiences that I had brought me to where I was that day. It gave me a greater appreciation for everything in my life, for my in-laws who became my adult parents, for my children who I saw as understanding where my mother was coming from in some of the conflicts that we had. And what I saw was it was that quiet strength that it gave me to make it through no matter what was going on in my life. So what happens is when we start this spiritual practice of being the love that we are and therefore seeing the love that is around us, it shows up in so many different ways. And it's not ignoring what is going on. It's not pretending that suffering is suddenly pleasant or forcing this shallow positivity like, oh, it's all good. What happens is when we really come from that place that Bob talked about, that center of where love just emanates out from us. It just comes out of us. We find that love appears as courage to ask for help. It can show up as a willingness to sit gently in our own woundedness. That was something I wasn't willing to do when it came to the death of my mother. Until I became willing, when I was able to accept that love and be able to sit in that and recognize what all the other wonderful things that had happened. And yeah, do I miss my mother? Yeah, that was back in what, 1973. So you know how old I am now. Do I still miss my mom? I do. I do. However, what I can do now is love her, and I can accept that love. And this love also can show up as compassion to sit with another and be there for them, not try to fix them, not try to tell them it's all going to be good or anything. Just allow myself to sit there in compassion and listen to others. And it's in these uncomfortable spaces when we go to love that we increase our capacity for compassion and resilience and for this self-acceptance that we have that deepens. And when we fully embrace love, we embrace the totality of our human experience. And so what I found was my relationship with love and our relationship with love, the love that's a capital L is the relationship with ourselves. It's guided and directed. It is a reflection of how we feel about our own selves. How much do we love every part of us? Yeah, when I was in first in college, in defiance of my father, I decided to take the foreign language Russian, which I that was an experience. But one of the main things that I remember from that is there were 9 Russian words that translated into English as love, because there were so many different aspects of love. And many years later, decades later, that is the one thing that I definitely remember about the Russian language. And there's many other languages where love has so many different aspects to it that there are words for it that in English translate to love. And so the love we're talking about here is that deep divine love, unconditional, universal love. So often we can imagine love as something we offer outwardly. We give it to our parents, or we give it to our children or our community, and it shapes the way we meet our own lives. Like if we're really harsh on ourselves or reject our vulnerability, our own vulnerability, we have a hard time, can have a hard time accepting that in others, or being uncomfortable when someone else is being harsh on themselves, or or being vulnerable. It may be difficult for us to be vulnerable with them. So when we value ourselves, what happens is we can we when we value this aspect of ourselves, we begin to understand that love is not limited or conditional. Because when we're in that space, we can think that love is. Love is vast. And what we're being invited by using the spiritual practice of coming from love, of taking that moment, and we'll talk a little bit more about what can we do, is that we learn to welcome the whole of us. We welcome our strengths and our fears. We welcome our gifts and our growing edges. We welcome our light and we welcome our shadow. And when we consciously choose to love ourselves in this expansive way, we begin to integrate all of the parts and pieces of us. I vividly remember at one point in time I was working with someone on this spiritual path that I've been on, this conscious, I call it my conscious spiritual path. And in a meditation, she had me go around to all these different parts of my life and gather up all these pieces of me that got left because of something that happened. And prior to doing that, she had me build a house to be able to put these pieces of me in, and find a couple of people in my life who I just fully trusted, and have them be in spirit, be the ones to take care of these children while we worked with them. And so in that first meditation, we gathered them all up. I took them to this beautiful house on a beach, right there on the ocean. And we ended the session. I went, home, and my homework was to revisit this house and try to connect with these children, these pieces of me, these parts. And the first time I went to go visit these children, if you will, they locked me out. They wouldn't let the adult me in. They said, "No way, we don't want you around." And it was like, I called her and I said, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" And so we started, I understood that it was because I was not in love with all of those pieces and parts of me. And as I became to love all of those parts of me, the wounded, the ones that I was embarrassed about, the ones that I had all these negative feelings about, what happened is they started coming together. They eventually let me in. We started having fun together. And that's what this spiritual practice can do. It will bring all of the parts of you together. And you begin to recognize that your past experiences are the currently what's going on, our current emotions, and all of our future aspirations are all woven into, they're all threads that create this magnificent tapestry that is you, that is me. And what happens is each of us are part of that beautiful tapestry that makes up all of humanity. So what I say is, what I've learned is to bring all of the parts of me together. Those pieces that shine and those that tremble, the joy and the grief, my history, my hope, your history, your hope. And when we start to practice this inner welcoming, this inner love, that's something we begin to unify within ourselves. And we stop fighting with ourselves and all those voices that sit there, and I call them my niggling voices, the committee, whatever you want to call them, that sit there and tell me why I can't, or try to stop me from being this greater expression of the love and the divinity that I am. We stop fighting. They become allies. They become the voices that warn me that I'm out of alignment. I'm off track. And we begin to actually come from wholeness because we love all of the pieces of us are of value. And we begin to foster this inner harmony and allow ourselves to unify with our own being. And therefore, we can be more love, more oneness, and more wholeness to all around us. And we begin to show up more authentically and wholly. So when we do this work, we begin to witness the fullness of love in all of these new ways. And we begin to recognize that love is not just a concept. It's not something that we give and receive, but it is a living and breathing experience. It is life itself. And it shows up, and we begin to recognize it when we do things like choose forgiveness over bitterness. When we listen with presence instead of rushing to fix or what's going to be my response to whatever someone else is saying. We listen and we're present for people. We feel this love when we let ourselves receive kindness without deflecting it. I mean, just think about it. How often have any of us been told, being given a compliment or a kindness, and then we deflect it by saying, oh, that's a really nice outfit, or you look really great today. Oh, well, that's old, or, it took me hours to look like this, whatever it is. Accept it without deflecting. That's when love starts to show up. And we can speak our truth, but we can do it with tenderness. We can speak it and actually say it so that it's not wounding others around us. And when we make this subtle shift in perspective during a challenging moment, we can feel that love, and it becomes real, and it moves through us, and it becomes part of our ordinary life. And what has really helped me is these small choices that we can make. That you make on a moment basis, moment by moment. I call them my micro corrections. There was a day when I was a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about doubt, and doubt came really big into my life. And what I realized, most of you know, I'm an engineer by training, also, prior to becoming a minister. And some people say, it's not rocket science. Well, in my perspective, it is. Because when you send a rocket out into space, you're constantly making corrections to its course. Um, there's little engines, that just say, oh, we're going to be off if we continued on this trajectory, and you make these little corrections. And that is what we do. That's how we do this spiritual practice of love, of what love really is, that deeper, that higher, that love that is unconditional, that is universal. And some of these corrections are just pausing before reacting, or being willing to start over, and recognizing in both subtle and profound ways that life is inviting us into this deeper belonging, and respond rather than react. And as we develop this fresh awareness, it allows us to recognize our own inherent nature that is love. We see it more clearly. We feel a deeper connection to the flow, the universal flow of love, of life that sustains all that is. We begin to see that love isn't rare or distant, that it's not just for special people and special moments, that it is what animates all of life. And our experience of the world starts to change. We begin to see things more clearly. We begin to respond more wisely, and we live more freely. And the result is love becomes less of a theory or a concept and more of our way of being. So in conclusion, the question is, what is love really? Excuse me. Love, we remember that love is in every moment of our day. And it's revealed in the way that we relate to ourselves. And it's a living experience, and it's available to us here and now as we choose to live in love. It's not about finding love somewhere outside of us. It's recognizing that it's a constant presence within each and every one of us in every moment. That every one of us is love expressing itself to the greatest ability it can. As we make choices and make those micro corrections during the day, we begin to experience more love because we are clearing it out and allowing the love that we are to more fully express itself. So when we're willing to let love be present both in the uncomfortable and in what we consider the good, we start to discover this deeper freedom, and we stop looking for it. We just let it be and begin to recognize that it is the very ground of our being. It is who and what we are. And we're empowered to choose love, even when it feels challenging. And it's the unifying force of all that we are and in every experience. So let us leave here today with a renewed willingness to notice love, to receive it, and to embody it more fully. Because the deepest answer to this question of what is love really, it's the truth of who we are. And it's learning to live through us, learning to allow it to live through us and as us. Just a closing thought, something that came to me as I was preparing this talk. You know, most of us are familiar with Winnie the Pooh. He's very philosophical, and he just kind of goes through life, just allowing it to be what it is. And just remember that Winnie the Pooh wore a crop top with no pants. He only ate his favorite food, and he loved himself and the life that he experienced through all of its ups and downs. So, if you need to, think about Winnie the Pooh, because if he can do it, so can we, and so can you. And that ends the lesson for today. Namaste.